So having flipped it so that the right sides of the garment are touching each other, we're now ready to pin the two pieces together, the one piece. And we're going to pin along the seam line, and you have a 5/8 seam allowance for this garment. So you can either sew this seam by hand or you can stitch it by machine. It doesn't matter. And what you're going to do is start at the bottom, go all the way up around and to the end of the sleeve. Okay, ladies, as you're stitching your seams, just remember it is a 5/8 seam allowance. You need to line up so that you're making your 5/8 seam on your mark on your machine, or if you're doing it by hand, there are a number of ways you can do it. The easiest way is to draw a line at 5/8 inch and then stitch on that drawn line. You saw how well just a regular pencil marks most fabrics, and you can probably do that on the inside so that you can stitch right along that stitching line very easily. I'm giving you the options to either line this garment or hand sew the edges of this garment. If you're going to hand sew the edges of the garment, here's the easiest way to do it. You need to use your iron, and the first thing you're going to do is iron over 1/4 inch. That's your turn 1. Then you are going to turn it over once again, turn 2, and you can iron and pin that in place. So, just like this. And you can finish the garment just that easily by stitching a beautiful invisible, either blind stitch or a nice discreet hem stitch to do that. The reason you're going to do a hem stitch or a blind stitch is because this is the inside of your garment and your outside will be like this, and you don't want your stitches to show. Turn and turn again method for hemming the front edges and the hem of your jacket works wonderfully on straight things. It does not work so wonderfully on the curve of your neckline. And the deeper you go into the neckline and put stitching, the more it will show. That's why I said you could get bias tape that somewhat resembles the color of your garment. Honestly, if I'd had time, I would have bought something that was a little bit more discreet than this, but it will do. What we need to do is stitch it on the front side of your neckline. Obviously, I'm just using a sample here. This is not my full garment. And I would fold up the one side of this 2-fold bias tape, and I will pin it in place in that fold area of the bias tape. And I will stitch right where that pin line is in that little fold area right there. Okay. Let me just throw a few more pins in and then stitch it down. Now you can again stitch this by hand or by machine. So I've stitched down the one side of my seam tape, and you can see that the stitching is right inside that fold. Now normally you would just fold this over and stitch it like that, but again it will show here and it's very unattractive looking. So my suggestion to you is actually to cut off this other fold, open it up, cut off the other fold, just like this, right down that fold line. And then just like that. Do it the whole length. I'm doing shorthand here, kids. And then you're gonna fold it over this way. Press that down so that the bias tape does not show at all. Fold that guy by hand underneath, and you have a much more discreet seam line there to stitch at. And you will then stitch your neckline ovals this way, and it will be much more attractive than any other kind of hand-stitched solution that you come up with. So that's how it looks pinned, and that's how it will look finished. All right?
Just the lining for the short gown if you want to make one. This is on the fold. We folded it to just fit the piece we need, weighted it, and now we're going to quickly cut it out. Just the same as the other one. So this is the lining that I'm working on here. Pat asked me to, after she stitched it, I had to clip the under. You clip where there are curves, which is going to be on this piece under the arm, so that because this is a curve, you need that stitch seam to end up being straight like this. If it pulls in gaps, you need to add another clip. So I have multiple clips. Over where the waistband starts to go out, the flare of the skirt, again, I clipped less clips so that you could end up with a straight seam. Then you iron it open so that it lays nicely. It's a little bit tricky, some of the spots, to iron it open. The sleeve, I can't get it over the beginning of my iron board, so you just place it here, and the sleeve is open. Iron it so it lays flat. It will make your garment smoother when you finish stitching it.
This is our now finished jacket without being the edges finished or without being lined. Everything is stitched except for the edges. This is the exact same thing made out of inexpensive fabric that's going to be our lining. It is identical to this. What we need to do is put the lining inside of the jacket. This is a second solution. If you don't want to do all that hand sewing all the way around the edges, this is a solution for you. So, we need to put them together with their right sides facing each other. That means the pretty side of the pleats facing the pretty sides of the pleats so that they line up and touch. And you pin them in place. You might wonder, what do we do with the sleeves? Well, you're going to tuck one sleeve, your sleeve lining, inside of the sleeve of your jacket. So here's my sleeve lining, and it's going to go inside my sleeve of my jacket.
You match your seams.
Yeah. And you match the underarm where the curve is.
And match the underarm.
Yeah. Now you're going to pin this entire exterior seam, which goes all the way around the back of the neck, all the way down the front, all the way around the hem, back up the neck, and back to the back of the neck. What I suggest is you pin it, but you don't stitch all of it, because you're going to need an opening from which to pull your jacket right side out. You can leave that opening in any number of places. You can leave it in your side seam if you want to, just a 5-inch opening, or you could leave, always in the lining, you never put it in your outer fabric. You could leave it in the hem of your jacket. and pull it that way. Doesn't matter where you leave the gap, but you must leave a gap or else you're going to have one heck of a crazy looking jacket. So we're going to talk a little bit about the two other jackets that we did, the short gown and the bed gown. And I wanted to show you how it looked before you turn it right side out, because you need to take care of some special things. Anytime there's a sleeve or a curve in your garment, you need to clip your seam allowance so there's full maximum flexibility and movement in the garment. And that includes around the neckline. You'll see how it is all clipped out here. And also, if the hem has a big curve in it, you'll want to clip that too. Also, corners need to be trimmed and up here. Now, do not stitch the bottom edge of your sleeve yet, because that is going to be our next thing after we turn this right side out. So what we need to do is reach in to the hole that we've left open, and it's always hard to find these when you need to. You're going to reach to each sleeve end and pull the garment right side out. So here I go, grabbing and pulling. That's one side. And now let's get the other side. Sleeves that we were talking about, they need to come out because we need to put in the bottom edge of the sleeve. So now I have the entire garment pulled through the hole, just about, not quite. I haven't. There we go. I have the entire garment pulled through the hole. I have the sleeve for the lining here and the sleeve for the jacket here. We need to get this edge done. That's our next step. So now we have temporarily turned this so that it is the garment that you're hoping to see at the end. We just have one little problem left, and that is how to get those two sleeve ends together. Well, what we're going to do is actually reach in. We're going to fold these over temporarily. We can even pin where those seams are matching. See, I have a seam here and a seam here. We're going to pin that together temporarily. And I'm going to reach in one more time through the jacket. Here I am reaching. I'm going to grab that pinned edge in my fingertips and pull that one piece out. Now if you look, that is one spaghetti arm. We have the spaghetti arm of the right side of the fabric and the lining side of the fabric. What we need to do is pin this seam together all the way around. So I will lay the two seams again next to each other. And I will pin at 5/8 inch around, making this tube look even longer. But it's just temporary, because when we turn this back out, one sleeve will rest nestled inside the other sleeve. So just do this seam, pin this all the way around, and then just stitch at 5/8 inch around the whole bottom of that seam. Then you can turn that sleeve and it will be perfect, and you do the same thing on your other sleeve.